There's a type of person in the office you've almost certainly encountered. They never volunteer for extra work. They never voice their opinions in meetings. When asked anything, they just say, "Yeah, let me look at it," and then never look at it again. You think they're lazy. You think they're incompetent. But in reality, they might be the smartest people in the room. The modern workplace has an unspoken rule, but most people learn it over time. The more capable you are, the more work you're given. The more enthusiastic you are, the more likely you are to become someone who solves other people's problems. The more opinions you have, the more likely you are to become a target in meetings. So, what do some people do? They learn to disappear right out of sight. No quitting, no complaining, no confrontation. They're just pretending to be stupid. And that's not weakness, laziness, or incompetence. It's a psychological survival strategy developed in a system where genuine enthusiasm is never rewarded appropriately. Let's be honest for a moment. Have you ever sat in a meeting, known the answer, but chosen to remain silent? It's not that you didn't know, but rather that you knew what would happen if you spoke up. You'd be given more tasks. You'd become the one solving problems that weren't yours. You'd have to stay later, attend more meetings, and get CC'd to an endless stream of emails for which you had no reason to be. And so you chose to stay silent. It's not that you don't care, but rather that you've cared too many times already, and the results are always the same. This is what most outsiders don't understand about the idiots in the office. They don't start like that. Most of them used to be the most enthusiastic people in the room, the first to raise their hands, the ones sending emails at 11 p.m. because they genuinely wanted the project to succeed. Then something happened. It wasn't a big event, not a dramatic argument, not a moment where you could point and say, "This is where things changed." It happened much more slowly. Time and time again, their enthusiasm went unappreciated. Time and time again, their opinions were ignored, or worse, taken by others and claimed as their own. A good job went unnoticed, but a small mistake was remembered by the whole office, until one day they decided to stop. It wasn't giving up, it was a strategic retreat, becoming invisible enough that the system no longer saw them as a resource to be exploited. And if you've ever felt that way, then you understand exactly what I'm talking about. What most people don't realize is that playing dumb doesn't happen in a healthy environment. It's a symptom, not the cause. Look at how most business environments operate. Good performers are rewarded with extra work. Not a well-deserved raise, not a real promotion, just more work, more responsibility, higher expectations, all for the same salary. This system offers a very clear lesson for anyone who observes long enough. Talent can be a burden if you don't know how to conceal it at the right time. Then there's the meeting culture. In most companies, the person who talks the most in meetings isn't always the one who accomplishes the most. They're simply the one who wastes the most other people's time. But the system rewards presence because it's seen as being busy. So some people learn to play the game the opposite way. Instead of trying to be seen, they try not to be seen at the right time and place.
Responding to emails just enough to avoid reprimand, but not enough to be dragged into a new workload. I have an idea in my head, but I'll wait to see who speaks up first and take on that task. Doing enough to avoid negative attention, but not so much as to be given more responsibility for positive reasons. This isn't laziness. This is the result of an intelligent person who has observed the system long enough and drawn perfectly logical conclusions from what they've seen. And the most interesting part is that managers are often the last to realize this is happening. Because from the outside, the ignorant person still gets the job done, still shows up at meetings, still nods in agreement at the right time. They simply learned to stop investing genuine emotion in a system that had long since stopped investing back in them. But this is the part that few people talk about. Pretending to be stupid isn't a free solution. It has its own price, and that price is often paid psychologically. Think about this. People have a very basic need to feel that their work is meaningful, that their abilities are recognized, that their contributions make a difference. When someone chooses to hide their abilities, they're not only avoiding taking on more responsibility, they're also cutting themselves off from that source of meaning. And the human brain doesn't handle that well. There's a psychological loop that occurs with people who maintain a play dumb strategy for too long. Initially, it gives a feeling of control, like you finally found a way to stop the system from exhausting you. Then, gradually, the apathy begins to spread more than expected. You start by ignoring pointless meetings, which is perfectly reasonable. But then you realize you no longer care about even the parts of the job that used to interest you. Then comes relationships with colleagues, then the feeling of going to work every morning, then everything related to work. This is what psychologists call detachment, an emotional disconnection. And in the short term, it works as a great defense mechanism. But in the long term, it becomes a different form of psychological burnout. Not burnout from doing too much, but burnout from no longer feeling anything about what you're doing. And here's the most ironic part of the whole story. The foolish person initially chose that strategy to conserve their energy, but maintaining a "I don't know, I don't care, I'm not involved" facade every day also consumes energy, just in a different and far more subtle way. You have to remember what you don't know. You have to restrain your reaction when you hear something wrong. You have to consciously maintain emotional distance in every interaction. It's not relaxation, it's another form of emotional labor that takes place silently, even unnoticed by those involved. When you've been in the workplace long enough, you start to notice rules that newcomers can't see, and one of the clearest examples is the incompetent employees aren't usually the least competent in the company. They're often the ones who were once very good, worked very hard, and were trained in a very specific way. There's a type of employee that companies inadvertently create. They're smart enough to understand the system works, experienced enough to know where further effort will lead, and tired enough to decide that the game isn't worth continuing. They don't leave, they stay, but only physically. Psychology calls this quiet quitting, but it's actually much more complex than the name suggests, because it's not a choice made in a day. This is the result of hundreds of small moments accumulating over time. The moment your opinion is ignored in a meeting, but a week later it comes out of someone else's mouth as if it were their own idea. The moment you do a great job on a project and the only reward you get is a more difficult one. The moment you look around and realize the person getting promoted isn't the one who does the best work, but the one who knows how to be around the right people at the right time. And then, one day, without making any specific decision, you just stop. Stop trying to make a difference. Stop investing emotionally in results. Stop believing that this system will recognize genuine effort. It's noteworthy that people at this stage often still get okay ratings in performance reviews. They still meet KPIs, they still smile in meetings.
But anyone observing carefully will notice something has changed in their eyes. The light of a truly present person at work is gone. All that remains is the gaze of an actor performing a role they've known by heart for a very long time. But this isn't just the story of a few individuals experiencing burnout in a particular company. It's a symptom of something far bigger. We live in a culture where a person's value is directly tied to their productivity, to their busyness, to their ability to deliver results. LinkedIn is flooded with people bragging about working from 5 a.m. Podcasts are full of advice on how to optimize every hour of the day. And the modern office environment is built on the assumption that if someone isn't busy, they're wasting company time. This system doesn't need you to be happy. It just needs you to be functional enough to keep showing up. And when someone realizes this deeply, the perfectly logical response is, why should I invest more than this system is willing to invest in me? Playing dumb is the answer many people give to that question. It's how the human brain adjusts to an environment where genuine enthusiasm is constantly exploited instead of being nurtured. And there's another interesting point. When enough people in an organization choose this strategy, the collective energy of the entire environment changes in a very subtle but noticeable way. Meetings become quieter. Not because no one has anything to say, but because no one feels it's worth sharing anymore. Projects are still completed, but no one really cares about the results. And management looks at the numbers, sees everything is okay, and doesn't understand why the company is no longer producing anything groundbreaking. The answer doesn't lie in the business strategy, it lies in the empty stares of those sitting in weekly meetings waiting for the clock to strike 5 p.m. So what does this mean for you? It's not simple advice. It's not a matter of find a better job or set clearer boundaries. That kind of advice ignores the fact that most people aren't in a position to change their circumstances immediately. But there's one thing that can change right now: how you perceive what's happening to you. If you realize you're playing dumb, the first important thing isn't whether to stop or continue, but to understand why you started. Because that behavior didn't come naturally. It's a reaction of an intelligent person to an environment that taught them that genuine enthusiasm is a risk, not an asset. Recognizing that doesn't solve the problem, but it gives you something far more important than the advice. It gives you clarity. And clarity is the starting point of any meaningful change, whether that change is seeking a different environment, adjusting one's own expectations, or simply no longer blaming oneself for reacting in a perfectly reasonable way to an unhealthy system. If discussions about workplace psychology, human behavior in the business environment, and the hidden mechanisms behind daily office life interest you, subscribe to the channel and join in. There's a lot going on behind the professional facade of the modern office that most people never really stop to see. Most of the idiots in the office didn't start out that way. They used to be the most enthusiastic people in the room. Then the system taught them a very specific, very consistent, and very patient lesson: that enthusiasm is a resource to be exploited, not an asset to be nurtured. And they learned that lesson very well. So the next time you see that colleague sitting silently in a meeting, not commenting, not volunteering, not reacting, don't jump to the conclusion that they have nothing to say. Perhaps they simply learned that in this environment, silence is the safest answer. And the scary thing isn't the silence itself, the scary thing is that you can completely understand why they chose it. Thank you for watching this far. See you in the next video, and pay attention to the times you're pretending to be stupid, because sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it.